Got it. Cheryl, you ready? Call this meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everyone to this evening's meeting. First item of business is approval of the minutes of last meeting.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Let's go ahead and vote. Make sure you have your microphones on when you vote.
Weiss,
Yes.
Bright,
Yes.
Waldron,
Present.
Skorts,
Yes.
Remy.
Yes. Next item is public participation. If anyone is here that would like to address us for like up to 3 minutes on anything that's not already on the agenda, please go to the microphone over there. Okay, seeing none. Next is the public hearings. And first is a resolution number 2, series 2024. Rachel, would you give us an intro, please?
Ready?
Or, yeah, it's got Rachel's name, but
Oh, yep. They weren't sure I was going to make it,
Yeah.
but I'm doing good. So this first request is a conditional use permit for Bell Beef. It is the first application in the Central Business District under our newly revised mobile vendor requirements or regulations. And some of you weren't on the Planning Commission, but those of you that were will recall we did a very extensive public process until last year. Mobile vendors were not allowed in the Central Business District. We went through a long, extensive public process and revised the code to allow mobile vendors with approval of a conditional use permit. So I know our applicant has said a little bit that this seems like overkill, and it is a lot of process for someone that's going to be there on a temporary basis, but this is how the code came out after that extensive public process. So the request here is really just temporary sales of frozen food, few days a week at limited hours. There's no permanent improvements to the property. It simply will be pulling up with a truck and a trailer, which will then be removed when the no sales are occurring. The property itself, like I said, is located in the Central Business District. It's one of the only vacant lots there, and in fact, when we went through that public process, this lot kept getting pointed at as a good place to put mobile vendors. That and the farmers market, I think, were the two favorite. Just zooming you in, absolutely a vacant lot here. The proposal that they will not access off of Main, they'll access off of Ash, the side street there. Let me show you. And I'm going to tell you, I definitely took liberties with the code to allow this site plan, not to our usual standard, but given the impact and limited impact of this project, I did accept a site plan that probably isn't quite to our normal standards. They did show it to scale and give us a north arrow. But essentially what they'll do is pull up the truck and trailer, and their product is frozen beef, so it's Bell Beef. The criteria for approval on a conditional use permit are all listed there. For the most part, we're looking at impacts on neighbors and neighboring properties. Some of the criteria really probably aren't very appropriate given the temporary and limited nature of this application, but they're all there and in the report for you to look at. And absolutely, the revised regulations were really designed to allow central business district owners, business owners, the ability to have input and to ensure that there weren't adverse impacts to their businesses with these temporary vendors. Staff is recommending approval. We've provided a resolution for you. We provided 3 conditions, and I want to explain them a little bit. The first condition is a standard condition we put on almost every approval, just making sure that any utility providers or they comply with all regulations as required. I believe there is an additional license they'll need to apply with the city clerk for as a mobile vendor. Second condition is also fairly standard, that they comply with all the stipulations in their submittal documents. So that includes hours of operation, days of operation, et cetera. Interesting enough, our new regulations don't speak to how long your permit might be valid for. It does state in the regulations that the Planning Commission will decide what is the appropriate length of time for a conditional use permit in the central business district. I somewhat, not based on much, have the conditional use permit being valid for 3 years from the date of approval, and then allow with a staff review after 1 year. That would be especially to ensure that there have been no issues or concerns brought up with the use. So that's open for you guys to see if you feel like that's appropriate. Really, there wasn't any guidance in the code as to how long it should be, other than Planning Commission can decide.
I just have a question about what you said. So you said after 1 year, staff will take a look at the property, or only if something arises, they'll take a look at it, or they will actually take a look every year at the property?
We're saying that they will take a look after 1 year, specifically looking to make sure there haven't been any issues or concerns. At that point, if there were problems, we could bring it back to the Planning Commission for either additional conditions or for it to be pulled. Sure.
When we were first discussing mobile vendors in the central business district, we initially had a time limit on there, and I believe when it came to P&C, you guys left it on there, and then when it came to council, they brought up a few instances of, well, what if they wanted it every Saturday and Sunday, you know, or instead of just during the summer months, or so it was hard for us to nail down an actual time limit. But I think the overall thinking was that it was temporary in nature. So that was the thinking when we first put this code change in.
So what did the council end up with then? Nothing?
That it'll be determined at the time of hearing. I get part of my reasoning for 3 years is it's a lot of process. They have to go Planning Commission, they have to go City Council, there's notification of neighbors, and 1 year seemed like not enough.
So if it was 3 years, then they'd have to go through this process again?
In 3 years, yeah.
Anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question for you, Nancy. This would be year-round? It wouldn't just be summer months? I didn't see any clarifying
Yes.
in the, okay.
If they want. I mean.
Anybody else questions for Nancy?
I have a question, and this may be for the applicant, I'm not sure, but so the sales that occur at this location will be recorded as sales in the city? Because there's a county location as well, correct?
Yes, so they will need a sales tax license from the city.
Okay, thank you.
Would the presenter care to make their pitch, and then we'll, if we have questions for him, we'll ask him, and then we'll open up for public hearing. State your name and make sure you push that front button, and it should turn green, but it's...
There we go.
Okay, Casey.
Yeah, this is Kasey Bell. My dad and I, Scott Bell, and I run Bell Beef, and looking for a mobile application. Yep.
Any questions for Casey? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
We'll open it up for public hearing. Anybody here to speak for or against? No. Should turn
There it
green.
did.
There
There
you
it
go.
did.
There you go.
My name's Dennis Giesler. My wife and I own the property. I don't know if you have any questions for me. My concern on the time limit of 1 year, there's not another business in town that you kind of come and say, hey, we'll let you be in business here for a year, and then we're going to check you out. If there's problems at the location at any time, even within a year, those have to be addressed and taken care of just like any other business. So to just put a time limit, a lot of food trucks, they do go for a short time, but I know some areas where food trucks have been at a location for several years, and it's worked great for them. In fact, people get used to them being there. So I don't really, as we talked when we were having all these meetings, to set a time limit, I don't think that's really valid at this time to do. But if you have any questions about the lot or anything for me, I know this is the first time getting a permit. Hopefully, as it goes down the road, we can expedite it where things can be done a little bit quicker and not take quite as long. But do you have any questions that you'd like to ask me? No?
Okay, thank you. Oh, Bob, you got one?
Are you saying the 3-year time limit is, you're uncomfortable with that?
I don't really have a problem with the 3-year, but 1 year I do have a problem with, because to go through all the hassle of it every year, especially if it's going to be something that could end up being there for quite some time, it's kind of a pain to do. Just like for me at my business, I don't have to go through this every year. It just, I don't think it needs to be. If any problem arises, that's got to be taken care of at that time. It doesn't, just like my business, I don't have to come see you guys every year and say, hey, can I stay open again next year? So there wasn't a time limit on it, and so then to set one now kind of isn't quite right.
Let me ask staff a question. It was my understanding that the applicant wouldn't have to do anything after a year. It's just that you guys would sort of check it out, right? So there is nothing for the applicant to do after a year.
Right, that's the way we wrote it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But
Anything
he is
else?
correct. I mean, if we had a problem that violated conditions of approval, we could look at it at any time. This was just sort of because it's new process. If there's something that wasn't a violation of the conditions of approval, but we were getting complaints about or whatever, we could address, perhaps.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for your time.
Anybody else speak for or against? Okay, we'll close public hearing. How's the commissioners feel on the timeline? Is actually, could be anything. We could say, oh, we want it for 5 years and 10 years, anything but 99 probably, right? So how do people feel about putting any sort of a timeline on? I mean, if there's problems, they're going to have to be addressed through any violations that the city would have to take care of anyway. But how did do you remember any discussion at the city council when they talked about timeline? I didn't catch, that was so long ago. Katrina, Katrina, were you on when we had all of this?
Yeah, I was, but I wasn't at the city council meeting.
Okay. So, yeah, so the new, you might as well have.
I think it's a pretty standard term for you know, a permit, which is essentially what this is, right? To either be 3 to 5 years. And so I think 3 years is, you know, not burdensome and relatively standard, and especially emphasizing that the 1-year review is a burden on staff, not on the applicant.
And I think that the issue of having a time limit is because it is intended to be a temporary use. If it were a regular business that we wouldn't need to bring back to you, they would be paving the parking lot and putting in landscaping and more permanent facilities. So that's kind of why we went with a time limit on it, to keep it temporary.
I'm fine with the 3 years and 1 year, as long as there's no more burden on the applicant to do anything after the year. So I like the 3 and the 1 for our first time.
Go ahead.
I think I would prefer a better map for future site plans. I know that you said you took liberties with it. This might make me sound like an unpleasant person, but it's 2024, and it's not hard to get a better site plan put together. I don't think that's a burdensome request, and I'm sure that staff would probably assist applicants in the use of Google Earth or something similar, so that's just a comment for staff.
I guess I'd entertain a motion then.
I make a motion that Planning and Zoning Commission approves P&Z Resolution Number 2, Series 2024, a resolution recommending that the City Council approves the conditional use permit for a mobile vendor on property located at 145 East Main Street, Cortez, Colorado, in the Central Business District Zone, as submitted by Kasey Bell of Bell Beef, with the staff's recommended conditions as stated in the resolution.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
I just want to get something on record. I'm totally for this. But again, I know you guys get sick of me hearing me say this, but for other temporary itinerant vendors, I'd still like us to look at a registration and fee process. They obviously are business owners in Montezuma County. They have another location. They're invested in this community. But I'm kind of talking about visiting food trucks, visiting vendors, that sort of thing. I think that we need to have a better tracking system and a fee system for that as well. So I know it doesn't apply here. I just wanted to go on record with that.
And I believe they do need the landowner's permission to be on there too, correct? Any other discussion? Well, let's go ahead and vote then.
Bright,
Yes.
Waldron,
Yes.
Scorts,
Yes?
Weiss,
Yes.
Remy.
Yes. Next item is resolution number 3, series 2024. And Nancy, are you going to present on this one also?
Excuse me, before we move on, so we just approved it, now it goes on to council, is that correct? Okay, so we're done, we approved it, you guys are full.
Oh. Casey? Wait, she's going to tell you when goes in front of council.
The second meeting in March, so the 4th.
March 26th.
Yeah.
Yes. Ready? Uh-oh. Yes. Maybe my computer did die. All right, well, we can. My whole screen went blank, do you think? Maybe. I didn't have it plugged in, so.
Oh, yeah, we're powered off here.
you got a charger handy?
Rachel just wanted to get it. All right, we'll start without, although I like to show you where we're talking about, so. Oh, okay, well, we'll have it if people want to wait.
Sorry, I just need a top charger.
We'll just sort of start, but this is an application for a rezoning of a small .66, little over half an acre parcel. The location is on Driscoll Street. It has been known as 1002 Driscoll Street, although I've been informed that that's not a correct address. The Driscoll Street is not constructed in front of this parcel, so no correct address yet, but there's one small parcel located between Alma and Coronado Street on Driscoll, currently vacant. The applicant, the current owner of the property is actually the Montezuma Housing Authority. The applicant is under contract to purchase the property from Montezuma Housing Authority and is Casey Spitzer. Let's see what happens. I'm afraid I'm going to have to log in, so that's going to be really annoying. Currently, the property is zoned R2, which is residential multifamily. The applicant has requested a rezone to MH, which is residential manufactured housing. The two districts really have similar use standards and basically the same density standards. The major difference is that the mobile home district allows for manufactured homes. It also allows for manufactured home parks and manufactured home subdivisions. While when you look at the multifamily dense housing options, those switch from being permitted in the R2 district to conditional in the MH district. This is a long process for me. See if I can make that happen. Oh, it's working for us. All right, let's get this. Yeah. All right, well, I'm going to page through it then. So I think we just went through this, the request and the change from, oh. I should be able to resume slideshow, but it's not, because I'm not all the way logged in. Do you guys want a break while I log in, or should we keep going? Keep going? It's okay, it's just my login's pretty complicated, so. So I think we went over the changes from R2 to MH. Honestly, very little difference. The applicant is hoping to place one mobile manufactured home on the parcel, which is not allowed under the R2 zone district. It would help to have this, but you guys have this in front of you. Part of the property is bounded on the north by property currently zoned MH, and it's on the east, west, and south by property zoned R2. Properties to the east and south are also currently vacant like this one with undeveloped infrastructure. Much of the western portion of the property is located in a flood zone, making any types of development more difficult. The applicant maintains that the property would be difficult to develop as a multifamily parcel and is hoping, as I said, to put one manufactured home on the property. On the portion of the property, it's the eastern portion of the property, which is unaffected by flood potential. Oh, look at you. So the issues with a rezone are, and criteria for consideration are, was the existing zone for the property adopted in error? Has there been a change in character in the area? For example, installation of public facilities. I don't think you can get to my PowerPoint. Okay. Is there a need for the proposed rezoning within the area or community? Are the proposed uses compatible with the surrounding area? Will there be benefits derived by the community or area by granting the proposed rezoning? Are adequate facilities available to serve the development? Is the proposal in conformance with policies, intents, and requirements of the Cortez Comprehensive Plan? And does the proposed change constitute spot zoning? Generally, the property is located in and will be accessed through a neighborhood that is largely developed in compliance with residential manufactured housing zoning. In other words, all the access is from the north, which has similar zoning to the request here. The major concern of the applicant is that the property is not suitable for development of a more intensive nature. And while a single-family dwelling is a permitted use in both the R2 and MH zones, the MH zone allows for manufactured homes, which is appropriate and affordable alternative where development constraints exist. Let's go through. As far as other concerns and issues, I talked you through some of the criteria for rezoning. It does not really appear that this property was zoned in error. The area is in a transitional zone, however, from multifamily zoning or manufactured home zoning to R2 zoning. There also do not appear to be any recent changes in character in the area. The existing character of the developed portion of the area do lean more to the MH zoning than R2. With the R2 zoning, most of the properties adjacent to this are actually vacant. The recently approved housing study does indicate a need for additional housing units of all types in the community, with an emphasis on affordable units. And of course, generally, manufactured housing is more affordable than stick-built single-family. It does appear, given the existing neighborhood and properties to the north, the developed properties, that the proposed use of manufactured housing is compatible with the existing neighborhood. Regarding infrastructure, there is not adequate infrastructure in place at this time, including water and roads, for more intensive development. However, they could be extended to serve the new dwelling unit on the property, or they could be majorly improved or extended to serve more intensive development on the property. So basically, given the limited nature of the requested change, the comprehensive plan does not specifically address this proposed rezone. I did find a few policies that could perhaps apply, which would be to encourage expansion of the housing supply within the city of Cortez to meet the needs of current and future residents, strongly encourage the development of new housing on surplus, vacant, and underutilized land throughout the city, and continue to identify appropriate locations for manufactured housing developments that will provide a balanced distribution throughout the city without a substantial impact on neighboring property values. Finally, that the property is adjacent to MH zone property, so it should not be considered spot zoning. We did send this out to agencies for review. Basically, none of them had major concerns except the city engineer, who spoke quite a bit about the floodplain and also connection of utilities and how that might be arranged. Let's see, so based on all of that, you have 3 options which you can recommend the council approve a rezone request. You can recommend that the council deny the request, or you can ask for more information and continue the application to a date certain. Staff is recommending approval of that you recommend approval of the rezoning request. We've provided you a resolution that recommends approval to the city council. Our findings are that the property is adjacent to and accessed through neighborhoods developed and zoned MH. The community will benefit from use of the property by the development of a currently vacant parcel within city limits. Adequate facilities are available to be extended to serve the development for the type and scope suggested by the proposed zone, and that the proposal is in conformance with the policies, intents, and requirements of the Cortez Comprehensive Plan. Do you have any questions? While you're
Yes,
thinking
I do.
about it, I'll pull up our maps.
The fact that I live somewhere near to this property, I'm very familiar with it, and I think it meets all the criteria, and I think it's great that it's close to manufactured housing district. My only concern is with the floodplain. Will the applicant have to do anything to mitigate that drainage? Because not only is it a floodplain, but there's an active drainage there from the ponds in Park de Vida. What will happen with the floodplain if, in fact, this housing is built? Will they have to mitigate it in any way? That's my big question.
Well, that will be in the hands of our engineering department at time of development. You know, depending on where they build and how much they disturb of that property, absolutely, if they were to build multifamily, they would have to do improvements and address that. By placing one home over on the eastern side and not disturbing that, I can't tell you.
So that issue will be addressed at the site plan time, not now?
Yes.
Okay, then I believe it meets all the other criteria. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Nancy before I start? You talked about, the city engineer did, about extending the water line, but it said all the way down to, where was it? Well, when it goes down Alma and it ended somewhere, but I didn't see that on the map, but now I can't.
I do have, once I get this up, I have a utilities map, so.
So are all the green lots there zoned R2?
Yes. The blue.
Let's-
Blue.
Oh, yeah, let's see, to the intersection of Wagon Wheel.
If I may, one thing I think is confusing about that sketch, it shows both Driscoll and the other street going through, which they do in fact not. They stop right there at...
Right, if you look closely, the rights-of-way go through,
Right.
but the roads haven't been
So
constructed.
don't be confused by seeing that Driscoll and the other street go through, because they don't. That's all
Yeah.
undeveloped land there.
Yeah, it said here to extend the water line down Alma Avenue to the intersection of Wagon Wheel Drive. Oh, that's Wagon Wheel right there?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I'm not seeing Wagon Wheel Drive. Oh. So with the city, we lost our picture. Is the city going to have to extend the street?
The applicant will. No, it wasn't.
I'd just like to say during this station break that I think by the time we have our next P&Z meeting, we'll have a new IT system, right?
So it's a system error, not a personal error? Personnel
Got
error?
out
I
of
always
it.
like to blame the system.
Start, yeah. I got out of it.
Well, Rachel, let me ask you, if the street is extended down, will it also open up then that other big area?
It depends on how far he'll need to extend the street. I believe that basically so that that property can be accessed. It wouldn't necessarily need to be extended to the end of the property.
Yeah, our engineering comments weren't completely clear, but the idea of just putting one home over in this location here, I think you can see it now, they'll just have to extend it to the driveway of the, where the new home is placed. And the discussion on water and sewer, you can see they stop up here, so they will need to, service lines at least need to be extended down. You can't, oh. I don't know how to get the cursor to show up. And I didn't make it giant. It's not there at all.
On that street that's to the left
Have
of
we
North
got a
Mildred.
pointer?
She means on the street that's to the left of North Mildred, which would be Elma, I believe.
Well, let me ask this then. So, did I hear you say that the cost of extending the street far enough to get into that lot will be the burden of the applicant?
Yes.
Yes.
What about the water and sewer line? Not the tap, just the line. Is that going to fall upon the city?
So according to the engineer,
It was complicated.
yeah, he's
I can't
making some
answer that.
suggestions, yeah.
Okay.
Well, from my understanding from staff report is that the city would cover the installation of the lines through the payment of the tap fee.
Up to the tap.
Is that not how the report was supposed to be read?
I put his words in there, word for word. I tried to talk to him, and we didn't connect. And part of that's my fault. I was on medical leave part of the time.
Okay, yeah, so taking the engineer's words, the city won't charge for installing the water main on Alma, connecting the meters, or connecting the service lines. This will be paid by the tap fees. So, that seems pretty clear to me.
Any other questions for Nancy before they have the applicant come up? I think I'm done. Would the applicant then come up and state your name, please?
Thank you guys for having me. Name's Casey Spitzer, and I got some handouts here that kind of show the site plan, I think, a little bit better. Would you like to see those now? I thought I turned these in when we did the application.
Is that this one?
Yeah.
That one? Oh, okay, yeah, it's a bigger blow up of, okay, thank you.
Yep. And it's in there. It's in their packet.
It's up here.
All right, I guess let me start by saying the intention of this is to provide cheap housing. Trying to target that $250,000 to $350,000 sell price for young families. They can't make it now with these interest rates. Building costs are expensive. You can put this in for roughly $120 a square foot versus looking at a new build, and if you did it very, very, very inexpensive, you're looking at $180 a square foot. So that's my reasoning for requesting the zoning change. There's a huge need here for cheaper housing. Young families are still having babies, and I know what it's like for me when I started, and there needs to be more opportunities for the young families. But going back to the utilities, well, I'll start with the site plan. You can see where I want to place the mobile home. That map showing the flood zone, that's just FEMA's 100-year floodplain. And you can drive by the lot and see that everything in that blue is pretty much a swamp. As far as utilities go, the meetings I had with the city, the utilities for this lot, because there's no big development going on past it, would be coming from CORNETT. That's where the sewer main is. You couldn't, the sewer main, it's uphill going towards, is that, going up Alma to Willow Street, that's uphill, so the sewer wouldn't work to extend the sewer that way. So we're taking the sewer out to CORNETT, and we believe we have enough fall. And the water line will be coming from CORNETT as well, as far as utilities go. And then the drive northeast corner of the parcel.
Any questions for him? Okay.
So this is just a potential buyer.
Correct.
And the housing authority currently owns? Okay.
And it'll be brand new used mobile home.
The reason is the floodplain. You can't develop with exists, or is it just that you think the affordability factor is better with the rezone?
Being developed without throwing a bunch of money at it. And then to try to do stick built here, I just don't think, I think it'd be this built cheap houses for, I shouldn't say inexpensive houses. The goal here is to provide more inexpensive housing.
Will you sell it with a foundation and skirting?
Yes.
And also,
yeah, right now, way landscaping, I want it, it's not going to be a dirt lot. I want it to look nice, and that's going to increase the sell.
railings on the front and back?
Yes.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Thank you, guys.
Open it up for public to speak for or against. Oh, yeah. Just a reminder that you get 3 minutes, and I think the clock starts there too.
How do I start the clock?
What? No.
Do I have to start the clock?
No, she does.
Do it? All right, well, I'm
State
sorry
your-
that they don't still have that map with the...
State your name first, please.
Ricky Lightfoot.
Okay, thank you.
I'm interested in this particular area because I own the big blue area that you could see off the corner of the map when they had the blue areas up there.
So-
So I have 8 acres that adjoins this property on the east side. So I'd like to recommend that you not change the zoning, that I think zoning is intended to be associated with planning, and there was a plan when they made the zoning the first time that was going to be a part of an improved housing area that was to the south. And so that was very clearly represented in that nice blue shaded map that I wish you could put back up there and show you. To say that nothing has changed, Cornett Heights is one of the early subdivisions in Cortez, and yes, it has lots of trailers, and to some extent it's been kind of a throwaway subdivision. The city hasn't invested in paving streets or anything of that effect, but to say that nothing has changed, the hospital, if it was there at all, has certainly greatly expanded into a much more pronounced facility. Many assisted living facilities are nearby, doctor's offices, physical therapists, Osprey, the Children's Kiva Preschool, Centennial Park, Parque de Vida, the Children's Kiva Montessori School, the Norman Butler Head Start program. All of those things have been added since Cornett Heights was there. And so when as a landowner, and I look at that, I see Cortez made the right decision when they zoned that as multifamily housing, because it has the potential to be a part of a vastly improved district that surrounds the central business district. You've got major parks, schools, hospitals, professional buildings. I just think that you're making the wrong call if you just say, just keep putting up trailers because we can do it cheap. There are ways to do affordable housing that don't have wheels. So I, as an adjoining landowner with 8 acres of property in that same zone, I'd like to see it not be whittled away.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak for or against?
Hello there, Catherine Harris, 810 North Mildred Road. That's a hard act to follow, basically. Ricky stated everything that I would like to state. The city has been making such strides in improving that area. As Ricky mentioned, there's the beautiful hospital, there's the assisted living centers, the beautiful new courthouse that's up there. Osprey is a beautiful building. To change the zoning of this area seems like it would be taking a step back. I heard talk about we need more housing around Cortez. And I also heard it mentioned a couple times how all those buildings, all the structures around this area are mobile homes. I also heard it say that there's a lot of vacancies in that area. So if there's a lot of vacancies in that area and there's already a lot of run-down mobile homes, why would we want to put another one? I just don't understand that. It seems like the city would be taking a step backwards instead of continuing forward like they've already been doing. I would understand, and I thank Casey for changing his terminology. His continued use of cheap housing was not really fair. A lot of us are trying to improve the area. A lot of us are improving our homes. And putting up another cheap place to live just because it would be easier to get into, I believe that somebody who has more invested in the area is going to help improve the area itself. And like I say, putting a brand new mobile home in the middle of a very rundown area that needs improvement to be able to compare with all the beautiful buildings that the city's putting around that, the beautiful park, everything we've been doing. You guys have been on the right direction with that. But I think that changing this zoning would be a step backwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak for or against?
Is that still on?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Steve Decker, 810 North Mildred. What I'd like to ask, you're calling it a floodplain, or are we calling it a wetland?
Floodplain's my understanding, yeah, floodplain.
So you're calling it a floodplain? not a wetland.
Correct.
That's correct.
Well, it might also have wetlands in it, but it's zoned within the city as a floodplain.
Okay.
They're not like mutually exclusive.
So you're wanting to put a pipeline across the floodplain, correct?
You're just, we're just listening to your comments, so.
Okay, because Casey mentioned the sanitation would have to put their line across that from Carpenter Street across.
Okay,
So normally you can't disturb a wetland. You have to leave it like it is. And I'd just like to know the difference you're going to have there
Okay.
with that.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else speak for or against? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Any comments, commissioners?
I would like to ask staff, would you make a definition between floodplain and wetland, just for our benefit? And this is a floodplain. As I said, I'm familiar with the area, and it doesn't seem to be standing water there. It just comes occasionally, which to me would indicate a floodplain. Is that correct?
It is a flood zone regulated by FEMA. So I've got that map up now. It's in the AE 100-year flood zone. So that is different from a wetland. A wetland is regulated by the Corps of Engineers. I don't know whether there's any wetlands there. I'm not certified to determine that. Generally, though, a wetland needs to be adjacent to a water body, which I didn't see present in this location.
I actually pulled up the National Wetland Inventory Wetland Mapper while we were having this discussion, because I do this in my day job all day long. And it is mapped as a riverine wetland system. So in this case, it is both a floodplain and a wetland.
Well, the city engineer was talked about bringing the water line down Alma Avenue, but if I heard Casey right, it would not be that way. It would go to Cornett Street. Is that everyone's understanding?
Yeah, I heard that same discrepancy. So where will the water line be coming from?
I think it's too early for us to figure that out. This is just try and pull back to the rezone request.
So yeah, I guess the real question is a manufactured house versus a stick-built house. Is that okay?
And keep in mind, manufactured house does not mean a trailer home. It doesn't mean wheels. It can be a, 5,000 square foot custom-built, system-built home. It just is not allowed in the RE2 zone district, whereas in the MH zone district, you can put system-built, or you can put a mobile home, but the modular homes are allowed in the MH. So it's not limited to a trailer house, as the reference was.
Are we allowed to ask the applicant a follow-up question, even if the presentation's over?
Sure, you can bring
Have
them
them
back up.
come
Would you
Now,
mind coming back up?
Keep in mind that their stated intention here tonight, they're not bound by it, that whatever the zoning allows is what they can use for the property, or they could sell the property and a subsequent owner could use it for that use. So you're not approving
Understood.
the proposed use, you're approving the change in the zoning.
So the proposed use then, as I asked earlier, would then come back during the site plan, and during the site plan would be the time that questions about the specific
Sure.
type of building. Right now, we're just looking at the land,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter, because the site plan would then talk about when and where and what might go there.
Yeah, and the issues of where the sewer or water really aren't
Right.
relevant to the zone change, because
So this-
they would be issues whether you left the zoning the same and somebody wanted to submit a site plan under the current zoning.
So this is all preliminary to any of that. We don't consider that
Correct.
tonight. Thank you.
I would just be curious to have you state for the record a little more detailed the type of manufactured home.
Yeah, so it's a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,600 square feet. If you want to look at it, if you're driving through Durango, it's in Clayton's lot right now. It's one that they have sitting there. I believe it has an 80-pound snow load on it. It's modern looking, drywall interior. It benefits the land to put it on a permanent foundation, and that's my intention, because that purges that mobile to the land, where it can't be just somebody hook a truck up to it and haul it off eventually. This is supposed to be a nice permanent home. It's not a rundown mobile home. I think the technologies came a long ways since 40 years ago in the 80s, which were most of those mobile homes are. They look nice, and they're an affordable option for people in the area when houses aren't affordable. So that's my intention with the property.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I might remind commissioners that all we do is make a recommendation to city council, so they have to go through this whole presentation to city council again. Any other comments? Guess I'd enter.
So I guess I'm a little curious as to staff's interpretation in section G on the criteria discussion. And I understand we're talking rezoning, we're not talking the specific proposal that is behind the request for the rezone, but I just, can you flesh out a little bit more for me how one singular mobile home meets A, B, and C? I guess it's just, is one home really, how does that encourage the expansion of the housing supply? How does that encourage development of new housing when and I understand you don't think it's spot zoning, but it's one lot being rezoned, not a block, not a section. I wasn't given copies of these policies. I'm feeling like I need a little bit more from staff to justify the recommendation. And if you don't have that tonight, then maybe that's something that we talk about at a different meeting.
No, I think I can talk through it. We do need to pull back and say it's not just for one single-family home. That's his intent, but we're changing the zoning from R2 to MH. He could walk away after this happens, and then, so you have to look at the impact of what's the difference. What I was looking at is what's the difference between R2 and MH. The only real difference is that MH expands the housing options from R2. To some extent, it makes it a little harder, or maybe protects the neighborhood better, because any multifamily use in MH needs a conditional use permit. So there's an extra layer of neighborhood protection and review with the conditional use permit. But
Can I ask a quick question about the conditional use permit?
Sure.
Could that not be replied in the reverse? Could the applicant not apply for a conditional use permit to put their proposal on?
No.
Okay.
Yes, so manufactured housing, not allowed in R2, allowed in MH. All the other multifamily options are allowed in MH to some extent, albeit they have to apply for a conditional use permit. So my feeling was you're expanding the housing options on this property by rezoning it to MH. That's why I felt like it met that criteria in the comprehensive plan. You're right, if you look at it one house, hard to apply the, yeah.
Or even one lot, which is what we're talking about, rezoning a spot, a lot.
And if I might add, I think due to the floodplain, a person would be very limited as far as what could be put there and where. So even if it is rezoned or isn't rezoned, that's something that will have to be considered when and if this property is developed.
Well, and I guess that kind of, I mean, that sends me in a different thought. If it's challenging to be developed and we're talking about rezoning, should it be rezoned to open space? And I understand that, like, there's also land ownership issues, but it feels very close to spot zoning from my understanding.
Yeah, Jim?
Let me speak to that. And I feel it's not spot zoning because again, I'm familiar with this area pretty much. If you take a look at the map, it's all manufactured housing there. And it's adjacent to the manufactured housing. And due to the floodplain, it's not really adjacent to the R2 on the other side of the floodplain. And I feel that also looking at this particular lot, since most of it is in the floodplain, it's a very limited area in which you can build something. And so that's why I feel that this does in fact meet all the criteria for a change in zoning, that it is not spot zoning because it is adjacent to all the other MH, and it's not really, even though technically it might be, it's not really adjacent to the R2 properties which are across the floodplain from it. So I feel personally that it would fit in quite well right there, and I feel it does meet all four of those criteria. And I was going to read the criteria, but you took it down, so if you can throw those back up there again. As I already mentioned no, you were there a minute ago, a second ago, go back. So I think it does meet A, as I just mentioned, and I think the community will benefit by having additional affordable housing. It's at a premium in our town right now, and I think that there are adequate facilities coming down Alma, and with the developer paying for the extension of the street to allow those facilities to go there, I think that meets C, and I think it's in conformance with D of the comprehensive plan. We want to have more housing, and I think this is a perfect place for an MH district. And I'll repeat myself because, like with A, it's not really physically adjacent to any R2 because it's all floodplain there.
Mr. Chairman, if I could give you a little input on the spot zoning issue and a definition that courts often use in these cases. I've kind of got two of them here. The classic definition is the process of singling out a small parcel of land for a use classification totally different from that of the surrounding area for the benefit of the owner of such property and to the detriment of the other owners. Spot zoning is, in fact, often thought of as the very antithesis of planned zoning. When considering spot zoning, courts will generally determine whether the zoning relates to the compatibility of the zoning of surrounding uses. Other factors may include the characteristics of the land, the size of the parcel, and the degree of the public benefit. Perhaps the most important criteria in determining spot zoning is the extent to which the disputed zoning is consistent with the municipality's comprehensive plan. So and I think I think the idea that it's basically half the property that surrounds it is zoned as MH, and the fact that there may be a public benefit. I think there's some debate on that in the discussion, but the staff report seemed to indicate that the public benefit of expanding the housing options is indicated by the application. In my opinion, it's not spot zoning, and So I would certainly not recommend that that be a basis for denial.
Are all those in the orange, is that MH? Because based on this,
Yes, so the orange is MH now. The access to the property, because these roads down here aren't developed, the access to the property is all through MH right now, which is why, another reason why it felt like, this is part of the MH neighborhood.
I actually had a question about that when I was looking at the maps, zoomed out a little bit. Why would the address be Driscoll, TBD Driscoll, and not TBD Alma? Because
Well,
I think
and-
that's the street that's being extended, right?
Well, we got that corrected, so it was submitted as Driscoll. The GIS coordinator comments were, it's not Driscoll, Driscoll isn't there. We need to wait until we see where the access and driveway is before we assign an address to the property.
Okay.
any other comments? I guess I would entertain a motion then.
Okay, I'll make a motion. And I'm going to read it from up there since I didn't bring my packet with me.
Here we go.
I make a motion to recommend that City Council approve the requested rezone from R2 to MH for property located at 1002 Driscoll Road, or to be determined, as submitted by Casey Spitzer with written permission from the owner through P&Z Resolution Number 3, Series 2024, with the following four conditions, the following findings have been met. So I'm moving to approve the application for zoning change.
We've got a motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second, any discussion further?
I'd just like to say that I sympathize with y'all's concerns, but I feel like we're kind of bound to follow what the criteria is. The council is the ones that really make the decision, so thank you for coming.
Excuse me, no, yeah, I'm sorry. Any other comments, discussion? Let's proceed to vote.
Waldron,
No.
Scorts,
Yes.
Weiss,
Yes.
Bright,
Yes.
Remy.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you all for coming.
And
Do we
can I
know
just
when
let
it'll
you know
show
on
up?
process on this one, because it's a little complicated? It will go for the first reading to the city council on the 26th of March. That's not the public hearing. The actual public hearing on the rezone request will likely be April 9th, okay?
Next item on the agenda is any unfinished business? Any new business? Any other items of business? And I guess you can look at the permits. I guess I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Let's proceed to vote.
Scorts,
Yes.
Weiss,
Yes.
Bright,
Yes.
Waldron,
Yes.
Remy.
Yes. Meeting adjourned.